Saint Teresa of Avila, remembered 15th of October. Teresa was the fifth of 12 children in her family. Her two eldest siblings were from her father's first marriage, and she was from his second. Her paternal grandfather was a Jew who was converted to Christianity, although he was later investigated by the Inquisition for repudiating this faith. However, no charges were brought, and Teresa's father became a wealthy wool merchant, one of the richest men in town, who was able to buy himself a knighthood. Teresa's mother died at the age of 33, after the birth of her 10th child. Most of Teresa's brothers left home and headed to the Americas to make their fortunes, since this was also the era of Spanish exploration and colonization. Teresa seems an unlikely candidate for the holy life, despite a famous childhood attempt at martyrdom. This was when, aged 7, and having learned about Christian martyrs, she and her brother set out to become martyrs themselves. Christians were not being persecuted in Spain at this point in history. Teresa and her brother planned to run away to the land of the Moors and to beg them to, quote, chop off their heads. It was an ill-conceived childhood plan that got no further than their uncle spotting them outside the town walls and taking them home. Too much has sometimes been made of this story. As a young woman, Teresa was apparently difficult. She loved romance novels and fashion. One can look at her early life and see that perhaps she was just a little too pretty, rich, and adventurous for 16th century Spanish society. Exasperated, her father sent her off to an Augustinian convent when she was 15. While she had little desire to become a nun, she did enjoy her time there, and later entered the Carmelite convent of the Incarnation in Avila, against her father's wishes in November 1536, at the age of 20. Life at the convent likely provided her with more freedom than if she had decided to marry. The Incarnation was a wealthy convent that was not strictly cloistered, and Teresa was able to come and go, visiting friends and family, thus able to maintain her social life even after becoming a nun. For a Spanish woman in the 16th century, this was about as much freedom as one could hope for. She spent nearly 2 decades in lukewarm religiosity. In her autobiography, she writes about wanting a deeper spiritual life, but that she struggled for a variety of reasons. However, in 1555, she had a radical conversion experience which changed her life. She was about to walk into the convent's chapel when she saw a statue of Christ that had been set aside for an upcoming celebration. The statue depicted Christ being scourged at the pillar, and the sight of it shook her to the root of her being and stirred a deep devotion in her. She was never the same again. From this point forward, Teresa's story is intertwined with her mystical experiences. She had miraculous encounters with the divine. She had intellectual visions which imparted her with theological knowledge. She saw Jesus, angels, demons, and the dead. She spent a few agonizing moments in hell and had visions of heaven. There were even reports of her levitating, something she found deeply embarrassing. Her best-known mystical experience was the transverberation, which has been brought to life through various works of art, the most famous being The Ecstasy of St. Teresa by Bernini. All this activity brought Teresa a good deal of fame, but it also brought concerns from the Inquisition, which was very active during Teresa's life. Teresa wrote her first book, her autobiography, because various clerical authorities wanted to examine her prayer life, her theology, and her mystical experiences. Despite suspicion, the Catholic Church deemed her theology orthodox and her mystical experiences legitimate. Concerned about what others would do with her writings, though, the Inquisition tried to keep the autobiography from the public. Eventually, the book was widely read, and it has since become a classic. Teresa was not just a mystic. She made her mark as a religious reformer as well. She believed God was calling her to return the Carmelite order back to its original strictness, which included a return to enclosure, poverty, and a commitment to silent prayer. The nuns were to be discalced, which means wearing sandals instead of shoes or going barefoot, to show a commitment to poverty. One other important aspect of her reforms was to accept women of all social classes. Dowries, which often kept pious but poor women from entering the religious life, were welcomed but not required, and a faithful woman seeking a monastic life would not be turned away due to lack of funds. Teresa opened the convent of St. Joseph in 1562, and she would spend the rest of her life establishing 14 new Carmelite convents and 2 monastic houses for men. One of the most often quoted episodes in her life occurred when she and some of her fellow sisters were travelling from Avila to Granada to establish a new convent in 1582, the last year of her life. There was a storm, and the river had overrun its banks, crossing the road that ran alongside it and flooding the lower lying land beyond. This meant that although the road was only covered by a shallow but fast-moving water, to accidentally leave the road on either side meant plunging into deep water. Travelling in a closed carriage, her sisters were alarmed. Teresa said, "As we are engaged in doing God's work, how could we die in a better cause?" She then got out to carefully lead the carriage on foot along the road. The current was so strong that at one point she began to lose her footing, when, accounts from her contemporaries say, the Lord sustained her. Teresa said, with what is called loving familiarity, "O my Lord, when will you cease from scattering obstacles in our path?" She received the reply, "Do not complain, daughter, for it is ever thus that I treat my friends. Ah, Lord, it is also on that account that you have so few," was Teresa's reply. After a full life, Teresa died at the age of 67 on October the 15th, 1582. Her last words were, "My Lord, it is time to move on. Well then, may your will be done. O my Lord and my spouse, the hour that I have longed for has come. It is time to meet one another." Teresa was later declared a doctor of the Church, one of only 4 women to hold this title. However, it is not just her impressive credentials that have made a lasting impression in Christian history. In her autobiography, she comes across as funny, smart, and warm. She has long been a favourite in Catholic circles, but she is a figure that is approachable to all Christians. Her context may be different, and her mysticism may seem strange to the modern reader, but her honest recounting of struggles with prayer, authority, and her relationship with God continues to be profoundly relatable to generations. St. Teresa is remembered on the 15th of October.